Good evening, everyone. We are here to wrap up day 3 of From Pain to Purpose. I'm here with Char Wong Richardson, self-love and confidence coach. So day 1, we chatted about our upbringings, our cultural expectations, how it affected our view of self-love, confidence, and our definition of success. And on day 2, we discussed imposter syndrome, perfectionism, and what we did to release the need for external validation, just so we can forge our own paths. Now, today, we are going to journey into redefining self-care and mental wellness, especially as women of color, carrying the weight of generational trauma. We're going to learn how Char and I chose to break free from harmful cycles, and our hope is to share with you ways to nurture yourself so that you align with your truth and not how society defines it for you. So, hi, Char, welcome. Thank you so much for
Hi,
joining.
Anna.
Hi. We're going to dive right in, and I'm going to ask you, in what ways have you seen generational patterns manifest in your own mental wellness or behaviors?
We were just talking about this before
Okay,
we were
it's
recording,
just
like
right in.
everything. And I think growing up not knowing that it was everything. And I want to preface this with it's not with resentment. I know some people come with a lot of resentment towards their upbringing. And I mean, I'm raised by two Chinese immigrants. Both my parents were born and raised in Hong Kong and moved to Canada. My sisters and I were all born here. And so there's a lot there, but like truly I don't feel resentment because they did the best with what they knew, with what they had and the resources they had. You know, they both worked full-time jobs while raising 3 kids and in a new country.
Mm,
And I just, and my grandparents were here too, so my mom's helping take care of them as well. And so and also I think they did better with how they were raised. Like my dad, I think he said he was very poor growing up in Hong Kong. He had like 7 siblings and they were in a tiny apartment. They just like roam free all day because that's just what they did. Whereas, and like they barely had food sometimes. But like now, my parents did better. They were able to work hard so that we didn't have to worry about food per se, like it progresses and hopefully we're doing better for the next generation. Um, but so I want to preface that it's not with resentment, it's just being aware of it and acknowledging it and then discerning for ourselves what is ours and what isn't ours and how we want to live our lives, not how it's been passed on to us by previous generations. And
mm,
yeah, it's everything. And I think when I was younger, I didn't really know. So it's a blessing and a curse. We have all these resources now and knowledge. But I think one thing that comes to mind right now, that's been top of mind because I have my eldest kiddo started kindergarten. And so school and education and performance and getting good grades. She's only in kindergarten. And I did a post about this. I already spiraled out of control after 3 days. And it was gradual entry. So really it was like a total of like 6 hours she's been at school. And the teacher just gave simple feedback about like, oh, she needs to practice her fine motor skills, holding pens and holding scissors. And I freaked out. I was like, oh my goodness, have we not been practicing? And I like, is she falling behind? Is she behind everyone? And my partner, who's I have to kind of call out there is a white cis het male, was like, she's fine. Like she's 4. She hasn't been writing like novels at home. So she hasn't even been using. She just colors randomly. Right. I was like, oh yeah. She's like, it's fine, chill out. And he's just like could not wrap his brain around what's going on. And I was like, okay, it's just me worried that she's falling behind. And because I don't want her to stick out more than she already does, and I think that's, as people of color, women of color. And like my partner's saying to my kid at dinner time, you talk too much because, like a typical kid, she's talking and not eating. And then, the woman and the woman of color, and he's like, don't ever say that to our kid. She does not talk too much, right? Because, we're taught to not take up space. Don't be too loud. Don't be
yes.
too opinionated. And so all of this comes up. And so I think now it's being aware of it, not projecting it onto other people, be it our kids or other people around us. And like for example, my partner, he's a grown adult, but he doesn't get where my headspace is at because he's not a woman. He's not a woman of color. And even whatever, if we were the same race and sex, whatever, we have different upbringings, different childhoods, different experiences and lived experiences that we bring to the table. And so, yeah, long-winded answer to your
Yeah,
question is
no.
I think it shows up everywhere, every day. And it's just not resenting, like, oh, this is what my parents did to me and messed me up. But it's okay, this is what has happened. This is how I project. But is
Mhm.
that truly how I feel? Do I really feel like my kid's falling behind? No. I'm just worried because of X, Y, and Z. So, like, how can I help her? And with lots of support from friends and thankfully some aunties that are teachers, it's just make it fun. Do some cutting exercises, do some, coloring and with her and make it fun. And so I think it's just the same what we've talked about. It's like filtering out the noise and tuning into ourselves and what we truly believe and feel and how do we want to change that course and that narrative. And I think more in depth is like as an adult, it's like our career paths that we choose. We're so taught by our
Mhm.
parents, if they were especially immigrants and people of color, it's like get a good job, get good grades, get a good job, make good money, buy a house, buy a car, all these like very practical things and pragmatic, but also to point it's like, well, is this really the career I want? Do I just want to climb a corporate ladder? It's like, what do I
Yeah.
want to do? Both my sisters are great Chinese Asian kids, are both accountants by trade and have now been promoted and do really well in their careers. But then I'm like, ugh. I remember honestly, I did well in accounting in college and in university, and I like did not tell my family because I was like, don't want to give them false hope that I'm going to become an accountant. I became an event planner, and my background's in marketing and project management. They don't know what I do for a living, but
Yeah.
right. And so
Yeah.
it shows up all the time. But I think
Yeah.
being able to discern that. How about you? I want to hear from you.
A lot of like similar experiences actually. Like it does show up in everything that you do, from where you are to when you're raising your children. And for me, it felt like love was conditional. So it was do as I say, or I won't love you in this way, or do as I say, or something bad will happen to you. So very fearful. So either anger based or fear based, right? So it came out in everything, for me, that I did as a way to please others. So complete people pleasing, showing them that I was worthy of love. That if I did these things to please them, then hey, look at me, you can love me. Um, and I grew up raising or seeing and witnessing that, like, what would happen if I didn't listen, right? I witnessed my own brother's abuse. So growing up, there was a lot of focus on do as I say. And that has shown up a lot for me, in other ways. I know that I talked about, like, even as I was growing up, I was one of few Black students in public school. And that number increased when I got to high school. But then it's experiencing a different type of validation, right? I experienced when I got to high school, there's like this other group of of Black students, and it was almost like there was this importance to be amongst each other. And I was different. Like, so even from growing up to wanting to find that connection, I was still treated as if I was different. I was taught basically, and how this came out for me was that I would never belong, that I needed to please others in order to belong. And when I fast forward to becoming a part of like the working world, there were so many microaggressions, that I didn't really understand at the time were microaggressions. Now that as you grow, you understand more and you see more. But even up to my last place of employment, and that was, I quit in 2022. It was just, I don't know why I stayed. Like, I absorbed a lot of it. And again, it was that need to people please. I felt this need to hold on to where I was, even though I had my own Reiki practice, but I was putting someone else's dreams and goals before my own. And for me, as a Black woman, that's what I was taught. So I was really doing more harm by trying to please others than that clearly did not really care about my definition of success. It was their definition of success that I was supporting. Um, and I think with that as well, just it kind of goes back to watching my parents. That's what they had to do. So same as yours, like, they grew up in a certain environment and not wanting to bring that environment to their children in their own way, right? And my parents did what they had to do. You worked your 9 to 5 or your shift work or whatever it was, and it wasn't about your dreams. It was about supporting someone else's dreams so that you were financially stable, so that you could pay the
Yeah.
bills and pay your rent or your mortgage or whatever it was. And to be honest, like my dad, he sold vegetables on the side. He was a gardener. We had like at one point acres of land, and he just loved vegetables and growing his own stuff. And but that wasn't his main income, right? Like it was still the 9 to 5 that brought in what it was that was supporting it. So I was taught that really it's okay to have your hobbies, but your dreams don't really matter. What matters is make the money, for sure, make the money so that you can pay the bills. But to me, what it translated to was survive. It was all about survival. And and much like when you say your parents did the best that they could with what they had at the time, that's what it was. Like my parents knew survival. And if I fast forward a little bit more to becoming a parent, and as we're growing our family, a lot of things started to come up for me as we grow our family. And as our children form their own personalities, their own reactions that triggered trauma that I had yet to acknowledge, I didn't even realize was there, that, you're working on. And, nobody warns you about that.
I know. You're like learning so much. It's exposing.
Nobody warns you about that, right? Like, so you're in this moment. I was in this moment of working on me, trying to, reframe my mind and shape my mind and see where these things were actually triggering me, while helping to shape these little young minds, along with side with my husband. But nobody warns you about the battles that follow with that. So it snowballs into this thinking of, am I good enough to, be this person's mother? How can I help them if I'm struggling to help myself? So it was, a bit of a hot mess at one point, but but when you think about it, it's like you were saying, it shows up in so many different ways. And so in our lives, and for me, it was that people pleasing aspect. And it was that at the time realizing, like, it was that fear that I didn't want to bring into the lives of our children. And here I am being fearful that I'm doing all of the the wrong things for them. Right. So for me, that's pretty much like how it shows up in my personal life. But I wanted to ask you, when did you feel the need to break free from these patterns?
Oh, I think growing up, my sisters, I'm the youngest of three. My sisters always told me I was adopted. Um, so I physically look very different from them. I don't look like I'm full Chinese either sometimes because I'm very tall and large. But I've always been very like loud and opinionated and outgoing and social. And I felt like I already didn't always fit in. So I guess this is transracial trauma, I don't know, or just sister trauma, sibling trauma. It's like they labeled me as like the black sheep. And it's funny because
Mm,
my eldest brother-in-law is like, it's so funny. Your sisters always said you were like the rebel, the naughty one. But like, he's like, he watched me grow up. He's like, you're a good kid. You got good grades. You got a good job. He's like, you just partied, but like, you like
yeah.
came home and did your thing still. And he's like, you're not that bad. I was like, I thought that, but then I was labeled that by my sisters. And so I think for me growing up, I always kind of had this struggle and this battle of like, and as you were talking earlier, it was like, the attachment of the conditional love, right? It's like just be, was it obligated, do your
Mhm.
daughter like your duties as a kid, get good grades, do this, right? And then
Yeah.
whatever else you do, like partying or hobbies, like it's on the side.
Mm.
And it's true, we didn't grow up with like we talked about this before. It's like we weren't asked questions like, how are you? How are you feeling?
Yeah.
I don't even think I got asked. I mean, maybe it was like a language thing and a cultural didn't have the vocabulary, but I didn't get asked like, how was your day? How was your day at school? It was
Mm.
just, are you getting good grades? Are you making enough money when I got older, right? And I think when I volunteered, my dad would be like, are you working for free again? And so
Yeah.
I think for me, I kind of felt like I always wasn't Chinese enough. I wasn't a good daughter enough. And then that
Mhm.
I think what really hit was, going through my adult career and realizing like it's soul sucking. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I think this right. It was my turning moment. I think it was like after I got married, actually. We came back and I thought it was just post vacation blues. And then I realized it kept going on. And I was like, what
Mm.
is this? I was like, I'm just not really, I'm happy and content. Just got married, have this beautiful home, a great partner, and everything was seemingly good. And I think that's when people, it's fine. It doesn't have to be like a hot mess central and you lose everything. But I think for me, that was a big turning point for me in terms of my career and generational trauma and that narrative. I think a lot
Mm.
of it was based around my career because there's so much attachment to your worth around performance and around career and money. And for me, that was a turning point. I was like, what do I want to do that makes me happy? That, and we're not taught that.
Mm.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It doesn't matter if you're happy. Just, are you making enough money? Is it a stable job? I think that was a turning point for me. And that's when I started to go down this route of, how do I incorporate helping people and coaching and consulting as a business within my
Mhm.
career, and within my life. And that was a
Yeah.
big turning point. And it was a lot of, like same as what we're saying, it's very exposing. You're like unveiling everything you thought you knew that you were told.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that was a big part for me. And previous to that was a lot of healing from my sexual assault trauma, was then kind of incorporating like,
Mhm.
okay, things are a little different for me. What is this going to look like for me that is meaningful to me? How about you,
Mhm.
Ash?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's so funny. You said like, looking like the adopted one. And when I was little, and I don't think I've ever told anyone this, so now I'm basically telling the world, but when I was little, I had this literally this dream or this daydream that I had like another family out there, that I was actually adopted and my real family's coming back to get me. Like, this is just, I know. And yes, laughing through the trauma, that's what we do, right? But, but I can laugh at it now, but when I look back at it, it's just like that. Oh my gosh, like I really didn't feel like I belonged, and I didn't like seeing the things that I saw or feeling the way that I did. But I know for me, like breaking free of the patterns, it really started when we decided to have a family. We started growing our family. And I was really aware, like super hyper aware of what I said, or what I did, what my husband said, or what my husband did, what my dad said in front of the kids, or what my mom was, said or did in front of the kids, because I wanted this space to be a safe space for our kids to grow. That was completely opposite of what I grew up with, how I felt when I was growing up. And it was just so much, and it felt like a lot to keep up with the, okay, how do I correct what he just said? Like, how do I tell my child, like, oh, that's not what Papa meant. This is how this is how we really deal with things, right? So it was so much. And that was really that part was the beginning in how I recognized what my issues were. Because, it began the process of acknowledging when those issues showed up in my life, meaning within the relationships that I had. And of course, owning up to what was mine, like what were my fears and what were my, wrongdoings or whatever. It was important for me to own up to them, and it was also important to see what was generationally a part of me as well. you know and I think I asked, like, what part of that breaking free was also asking, okay, well, how did my parents deal with this situation, or this particular situation when they were my age, or so I started asking those questions. And when I would see the similarities in my patterns, I began to address them one by one. And it's not as easy as it sounds, because it's so easy to say, oh yeah, I just addressed all of these things, but it's not. It was tough, it was hard, there were tears, there was nausea. There was, you go through all of the motions. And because through healing, it's, as you're healing traumas, it's not a one and done, because you're healing. And as we heal that layer, and this is what I tell my clients as well, as you heal that layer, we may be given a reminder, so to speak, months or years later, that there's another piece to that layer that we haven't addressed. And so I found that was a great turning point for me, because like it was ongoing. It really was. And your healing journey is ongoing. It always is. Um, but for me, I would take specific patterns in how I would communicate, for example, and see where I copied that pattern from my parents and what I created on my own, and then challenged myself to flip it to a healthier narrative. Um, and I think part of that too was also setting really important boundaries on how myself and others communicated with our children. Like that was one of the really the driving force to break free of those traumas, because they're not ours, right? And like you said, it's not about pointing fingers or saying, oh, all of this was so horrible. It's also about, honoring the fact that we did get certain strengths from our parents, and we did get certain values from our parents that, and we've talked about this before, even, before this, but just honoring certain things and certain values from our parents as well. But it also helps us set those boundaries. And that was really an important piece for me. And the reason that kind of the catalyst to break free of that narrative. So saying,
that's so true.
yeah, yeah. Saying all of that, like, I'm curious, what does self-care look like for you now? Especially as, you break free from what you normally understand and know to be real that you were raised with. What does your self-care look like now?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's when, as you're saying that, like breaking free and not pointing fingers. It's like, imagine this like bubble, this safety bubble around ourselves. You can't change the past, can't control other people. It's now focus. Now this has happened, your upbringing, and this is happening, whatever people are in your environment currently or things. But it's like, what can I control? It's like, I can choose how to react. I can protect my own energy and protect my mental health and wellness. And and I want to also call it, people, whether you have actual kiddos in your life or not, it's like even your own inner child, taking care of your own inner child. How would you speak to your own inner child, and healing that? But for me, self-care, I think a lot of it is boundaries. And I know that's such a buzzy topical word, but truly it's, it is true. And that for me, I literally had to Google like the art of saying no, how to say no. So practicing that and focusing what I really want to do, is something going to bring me, whether it's, social interactions or family obligatory obligations and events, or it's like your career or business, it's what do I really want? Is it going to bring me energy? Like, or is it going to drain my energy? And it's okay to say no. And I've also, taught my partner too, like we just say no. We don't need to make up excuses, especially when it's like social and family stuff. We often make up excuses. Don't. I'm not saying lies either, but like just even any excuse. You don't need to say what we're doing if we're busy. It's just, no, thank you for thinking of us. We won't be able to make it. Right. Or just say no. Right. And I think for me, it's really being able to discern what I want to do, not what I feel like should. I think we talked about this already. It's like shoulding all over yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I should do this, or I should go to that. It's like, well, do you want to? When you say should, I feel like there's an external factor.
Yeah.
And so really getting into that practice, and it's hard at first, and then you feel guilty. And so being able to set boundaries, whether it's like verbally overtly out there, you say to someone, or it's just like for yourself, like, I'm not going to go out Friday night because I just had a really rough week. Even if it's for yourself, setting boundaries without the shame or guilt. So it's not just setting boundaries, sitting without the shame or guilt. I think that's been a huge self-care piece for me. It's protecting my energy. And protecting my like physical space too, right? And I would say that's a huge piece of me, and taking time for myself. And it's not selfish. I know, again, that's really buzzy too, but it's not selfish. Everyone needs some time to themselves to, unwind or meditate or whatever your practice is. And also with that note, I think your practice or modality you choose can be different every day, every season, depending how what's
Yep.
coming up for you, right? And so like meditation is not for everyone. I'm sure Esther and I would strongly encourage everyone to try
Yeah.
some form of meditation that works for you, or like just going for a walk out in nature, being around friends. Sometimes it's
Yep.
not being around people. I think figuring out your few, and maybe if you need to write it down and then kind of go to your list and see. I think having those practices ready to go, those
Mhm.
tools, so to speak, in your toolkit or tool belt, and being able to tap on those and use those whenever you need. And I think really truly taking time for yourself. Like my partner and I, yes, we're married, happy, lovingly married, and we have kids, but
Mhm.
we've gone on trips with we're going on our first trip, just the two of us with other adults without kids, but we've gone
Yeah.
on trips separately with our own friends, and it's healthy. It's healthy, right? And
Yeah.
it's, everyone needs time apart from other people or on their own. And I think just kind of, getting clear on what you like to do, what brings you
Mhm.
energy and makes you feel rejuvenated and re-energized after. But definitely boundaries, and Astrid and I can talk all day long about that, I'm sure. But that's been
Yeah.
a huge one for me in the topic of trauma, generational trauma, and self-care. I think that's been a huge one, is setting boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I definitely feel that, especially with the, like you mentioned, taking that trip, that going away and having that self-care and that like togetherness time together. And it's just something that we just don't think about those things, or we wouldn't think about those things because that's not necessarily what we were taught. It was just like, take care of all of these things, and that's all that matters, right? Um, I would have to say, like, for myself, self-care began similar to you. It began with awareness and boundaries. And again, we could talk about it because we've laughed about it too. But we were not necessarily taught about self-care. I was taught, if anything, survival. Take care of your spouse, take care of your kids. There was no room for taking care of me. And I didn't know what I needed until I had my first Reiki experience. Um, I found something, or like that something found me actually, that I had not accessed up until that point. And I was so defiant. Like I'll be honest with you, there were times where I felt defiant and I didn't want to be like either of my parents. That so much so that that was the focus versus finding the best way to take care of myself and to
Mhm.
love myself, and to understand how to love myself. So it took Reiki for me to get out of that mentality. But now self care looks completely different for me. When I was starting this energy healing journey, it uncovered so many reasons why I acted a certain way or reacted a certain way in the past. And it had to do with a lot to do with how safe I felt. I knew that I needed a different form of self care, or I needed something. At that point, it didn't register as self care. It's just I needed something, right? So I began with Reiki, and what that energy healing allowed me to do was specifically tap into where I was holding my pain. So, mind you, I started this over a decade ago. It's been like almost 13 years now. And, as I've mentioned before, this is ongoing. This journey of healing, it's ongoing. But with each reminder and each reveal of whatever it was that was triggering for me, I felt more ready and able to deal with the next layer that was coming. So uncovering the layer, did not feel as debilitating as the last one. And I felt stronger and stronger. So I learned to honor myself, and I learned to honor myself and when I needed rest, because healing, it's not just about the go, 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 which we've been taught. Go, 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 do all of these things, do all of these things, but we were never taught about rest, at least in the Western world. It wasn't about rest. It was always about go, go, go. And then, personally for me, there was this misconception that I believed that as a healer and as a person of color, I needed to focus on others. And that's where I'll get my strength and do all these great things. No, This is where I
Mm.
became tired. And when I look back at that, I did not have the proper boundaries in place. It's one thing to give of yourself, to give of your purpose, and it's an entirely different thing when you're giving up your entire self. And
Oh
that's what I
yeah.
was told. I was becoming resentful, which is a feeling I had to feel to move forward into accepting what I wanted to feel. So that uncovered the boundaries layer where I needed to set those clear boundaries of what I was able to give others without exhausting myself. Um, growing up in a West Indian household and growing up as a Black woman, I was taught take care of others and first, and then, that's it. That was pretty much it. Just take care of others. And then it turned into take care of others first, or it will fall apart. And so recognizing that I had to take care of myself first in order for others to truly benefit from my care was a true light bulb moment. So we're
Mm.
constantly evolving, and I needed each of those lessons. And by lessons, I mean like the emotions and the feelings to bring me into this awareness of how I will allow myself to feel in the future. I think, and one last thing I'll touch on is that I also had to be aware of who was in my circle. That
Yeah.
not everyone belonged around me, and not I didn't belong around everyone else, even if they had similar struggles. Being aware of who was in your circle as you are reclaiming who you are and doing the inner work is so important, because that can make or break your progress. That can make or break you. And
Oh
yeah. And ask yourself, and these are the questions that I ask: are they supportive? That was like the biggest question, because as a healer and as an entrepreneur and doing and kind of marching to the beat of our own drum and doing our own thing, it's not the norm of a West Indian household, of a a household raised person raised by Chinese immigrants, right? So are they supportive? And they will not be able to understand what you went through or what you're going through, and same as I can't understand what you're going through or what you went through, but
Mhm.
can they support your needs and respect your boundaries as you do so? Because there's going to be
Yeah.
certain things that we need as we're healing, and there's going to be certain times where, like you said, no is no. There's going to be certain times where no, I won't be able to attend that function because right now I'm really inside myself and I need to work on me, right?
Yeah. And if someone can't support that, they don't have to understand. Like, no one's ever going to know your exact experience because we're all unique.
Yeah,
But it's not about agreeing or understanding. It's just respecting. I love you enough that I'm going to respect that, and that,
yeah,
yeah, that's so true.
yeah,
And I think what comes up for me when you're saying that, it's, very simple. Like, even like my girlfriend, she'll be like, you know what, we had plans. And if she like quote unquote bails, I am so secure in our friendship that I know she just needs some time right now for whatever
yeah,
she's going through, right? I don't need to ask. I don't need to pry. I don't feel like, oh my gosh, you're bailing on me. But no, it's just like, okay, I'll see you when I see you. Is everything okay? Do you need anything? Right?
yeah,
But that,
yeah.
how you act and react projects that, right? Because I've done the work, and my girl, this specific friend, and I, I know she's doing a lot of healing work too. And so we're on the same wavelength. So I get it. We get it energy wise too, right? And I
Mhm.
think you have to protect your circle. And, speaking boundaries. And I know, again, when we say that, so buzzy, it's like, for example, I'm not going to name names. Like, there are certain people in my life that have been told respectfully that they are not allowed on my property, on my home, because the safety of my children and myself are at risk
Mhm.
because of X, Y, and Z. Doesn't matter. But, so like, it sounds harsh, but this is something my partner and I have decided,
Yeah.
and again, it sounds harsh, but that's where we've come to, because we're aware enough, and we're, secure enough in our own selves and awareness, and have done that work. And it's hard. I'm not saying it's fun to be mean. Like, we weren't trying to come from a mean place, right? It's truly,
Mhm.
this is what we need, and this is what we decided as a family that's important for us.
Mhm.
And so, just an example, because we're like, what does that mean? Like, what do boundaries mean? And sometimes it's just not seeing a certain person for a certain time. But yeah, protecting your circle of people that you allow to get to experience your lovely energy, right?
Yeah.
That's precious. And if people don't respect that, then they don't deserve to be in your circle. And you can wish them well. You don't have to be mean or resentful. Just wish them well. Hopefully, you'll do some of your own healing work. Maybe we'll come back
Yeah.
together and connect. Maybe we won't.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so important that, and I love how you have that support too, right? When you have, whether like for you, it's your spouse, and whether you have somebody who's also in your corner and understands what your boundaries are. And I understand not everyone will have that, but it's such an added bonus to have that piece. And now that we understand our turning points for self-care, and let's talk about the actual practices. So you talked about setting boundaries, and is that the most effective practice for you in healing from generational trauma, or are there other practices that you incorporate into your day-to-day life to
Oh,
heal from
meditation,
generational
for sure. I love that you
meditation?
touched on Reiki because I've done that myself too and practiced that. And
Mm.
yeah, I think also being open, and Astro was one that really taught me, was like, try the different modalities, but one at a time and not everything at once. Cause I'm that person, like, let me do everything. I'm going to do everything at once and do it all. Right.
Yes.
And so thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I did hypnotherapy. I've done
Yeah.
EMDR. Like there's lots of different modalities. And I think for me a lot is meditation. But I don't know if this is gonna like offend anyone, but like hypnotherapy and like EMDR, those are just different meditative states that I mean, I'm not experienced and expert in that field.
Yeah.
But I would say, yeah, meditation. And then I would do guided ones for specifically what I need for that day. That's
Mhm.
been a practice. And I honestly feel like even just 5 minutes after getting into it and having it as a regular practice, 5 minutes of meditation in the morning sets me up for the day. So I'm like less irritable and things
Yeah.
can flow better, and I actually have better sleep as well too then at the end of the day. But for me, that's been my go-to. And talking, talk
Mm.
therapy, I have my regular counselor, regular coaches I work with, but just talking to my partner and friends that I have curated, so to speak, into my circle that I keep. And yeah, being able to talk about things, I think has been really great. Like even with you, Astra, right? Like, because we bring different insights and perspectives, and it's really great to have that synergy of all these people you've already curated that you trust
Mhm.
and know you well, to help you give these different insights and perspective, and essentially call me out when sometimes, right? Like
Yeah.
Astra and I, we talk just recording and doing this. It's like embrace imperfection. Let's just do it, right? And I think having people in your
Yeah.
circle and in your corner of the world that, so I think definitely curating the people in my corner and talking to them a lot and sharing. Like I'm an oversharer too, so I don't know if that's good or bad, but talking to people, that really helps. And I think that's really helped with a lot of trauma in my life when I did enough healing to be able to talk about things more and about experiences more. Then it really
Mhm.
helped to have people who do love and care about me, and I'm not worried about a conditional love from them if I told them this deep, dark secret. It wasn't a secret, but like all these traumas and
Yeah.
things we've gone through. I would say, yeah, so meditation and talk therapy, whether that's a paid professional or people in your inner circle or both, that's been
Mhm.
really helpful for me in my self care practice. And yeah, definitely being able to have that awareness to carve out time for myself. How about you?
Mhm. Amazing. I feel like I feel like we had this question and we kind of somehow channeled each other. So I'm like, oh yeah, me too. Oh yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. But for sure, energy healing, like meditation was one of them, but energy healing came first. It's just a great way for me to see where I'm holding my energy and what needs to be released. Over the past few years, because of Reiki, it's helped me to add other things like, like massage and acupuncture. But all of the professionals that I work with, um, even though people say, oh, it's massage, it's not really energy work. It kind of is, because it's, they're manipulating certain areas of my physical body, but allowing that energy to flow. And that was a really key and important piece to part of my self-care practice. And like you as well, like other forms of energy healing. So I've done hypnosis, and I also have my own Reiki practitioner. I like self-care. I love taking care of me. um, And I incorporate these things, and of course, again, it's like it's one at a time. It's what I feel called to do, what my energy feels called to do, what my spirit feels called to do. And they all came into play at the right time. And it wasn't out of, like desperation by any means. It was just more of, okay, now this is happening. What do I need? So definitely energy healing and meditation, talk therapy like you, both professional and that special someone. Like I have my spouse, but I also have my best of bestest friends, and she's just a light and amazing. And I think it's important when we talk about talk therapy or therapy in general to also understand that it's important. It's an important piece because it's a safe space for you. And that's what it should feel like when you're talking to someone, that whatever you're saying is held with confidence and knowing that you're able to just let it all out. Like, I know that I can talk to my best friend and tell her all the things that I'm feeling, and she won't tell me that I'm crazy. She won't tell me that we need therapy. She won't tell me all of these things. She'll just tell me that she's supportive of me and will help me talk through it versus talking at me. So it's really important to have that talk, for me anyway, for talk therapy. And all of these things, the last thing that I do is also like I redesign my thoughts. And all of these things that the self practice, that I've incorporated. So it's the meditation, the energy healing, the talk therapy. It's all helped me to redesign my thoughts, to reflect who I am versus who I felt others thought I was in the past. And it's creating a safe space in my mind, because no one else, when you think about it, no one will have access to your mind. It's what you are absorbing and putting in, but can you redirect that and change that? So those were some key and important pieces, for me to, in terms of self-care.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. So, Char, this has been such a pleasure to share this experience with you, and I hope that that what we've shared gave our viewers hope and clarity for their next steps in their healing. Was there anything else that you would like to share before we close?
Yeah, I think it was a perfect segue. This last piece was self-care is if you loved what we've talked about the last 3 days, please, and if you have more questions or comments, please tell us if you loved it and what's resonated with you. But if you have any further questions or comments or topics that have come up for you and things that have come up for you, please DM one of us and let us know. We'd love to hear, and we can maybe jump back on alive and talk about that. But if you don't have these people in your corner to help you, Astra
Mhm.
and I can be your people. I think this is a great segue for us to announce Astra and myself, also with another colleague of ours, Sue, who is a hypnotherapist. We are actually starting a membership because in our communications together as entrepreneurs and heart-led founders together, we realize we want a sisterhood, a community where women and women of color can heal, grow, and thrive together on this healing journey, because it can be very, like we said, exposing and vulnerable, and it's an ongoing journey. So if we decided we've been trying to look for this, and there's some that exists, but it just didn't land for us. And so now we're just going to make it. We're going to create it. So it's called Healing in Color Community. It's a sisterhood specifically for women of color who are on their healing journey, whether you're brand new, just getting started, or quite far along, just to heal in community and find other people who connect with us, conscious connections. We are launching that soon with the new moon, I believe. So please reach out to us or just follow us and wait for details. I think that's my last thing is, if you are looking for support and community and a collective on your healing journey, please look out for our Healing in Color community and join us in our little group, and that'd be great because we'll be your people in your corner. If you haven't already found those people, or invite those people that you already have in your corner, we can all join together. That'd be my parting words. So any questions, anything that comes up, please contact one of us. We'd be happy to share our insights and our learnings and great to hear from other people too. Thank you so much for doing this, Astra, and kind of spearheading this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Char. And thank everyone for tuning in. You are the reason for this part of our journey, and just for us being here. So thanks so much. Thank you for sharing this time with us, and we will see you soon. Have a great evening.
Thank you.